Welcome to another Aluvian Gaming game review. Today we're getting all wet in Submerged. The game begins with a girl and a boy adrift in a boat as it floats past the sunken remains of a city's downtown. The boat ends up making dock on an island comprised entirely of the upper floors of an old drowned building. It appears the boy is sick, and the girl, who we assume is his sister, is then tasked with finding medicine for him. And that's pretty much the entire story of the game. Even once the game comes to its inevitable conclusion, you find yourself thinking, okay, so what happened? The severely lacking story could possibly be overlooked if, at the very least, the world was alluring, or engaging, or even just semi-interesting. And sure, the world looks nice at a quick glance, but once you spend more than a few minutes playing, you begin to realize that everything in the game is just so unsatisfyingly generic. They could have done so much to give the locations even a hint of personality, but instead they left everything as bland as a rice cake. The buildings are supposed to be a condo, a hospital, a library, and a few hotels. Each of those should retain some uniqueness in their ruined decorum, but alas, they're all samey looking and generic. Submerged is one of those games that shows better as a screenshot than it does when you're actually playing, because then you realize how uninteresting it really is. Even all of that could possibly be overlooked if the game was fun, but unfortunately the gameplay is an exercise in tedium. It consists entirely of piloting a small boat around, going from building island to building island, looking for supplies and random collectibles. You then climb the buildings along a mostly linear path to the top. There's only really one way to proceed, and it's not really a puzzle to solve. Luckily, each of the tall buildings seem to have whatever the supply is that you're currently looking for in a supply crate at the top. Convenient. But be sure you've collected anything you may want to pick up from the building before opening that supply crate, as you somehow teleport right back to your brother after receiving it. None of these things are particularly fun to do. The boat doesn't seem to obey the laws of physics, the climbing feels a bit clunky, your character slow jogs everywhere as there's no sprint, and the camera seems to fight you every step of the way. The climbing puzzles lack any skill. You don't have to balance on thin beams, nor can you fall. There are no learned skills or abilities you use to solve puzzles. There's no combat or anything else to do, besides climb boring buildings and pick up collectibles. The collectibles themselves are small stylistically drawn square pictures that are supposed to reveal more about the world, but as they're just pictograms, they're pretty limited in explaining anything and don't really add any interest in the world. But as there is zero dialogue in the game besides a protagonist occasionally talking to herself, it's the most you're gonna get. One of the few things I liked about the game was the calm, ambient music, but it didn't play all that often, so you sat in silence quite a bit. The sound effects weren't all that good, especially the motor for the boat that you're driving around for the majority of the game. It was so faint, I wasn't even sure it had a sound at first. The ambient animal sounds they threw in randomly were okay, I guess, even when there appeared to be no source of the sound. At first glance, the game looks like a charming and artistic indie adventure game, but the game feels just incomplete on so many levels. Climbing and collecting should be aspects of a game, not the entirety of it. Submerged feels more like a proof of concept than a complete game, and after the first 15 or 20 minutes of playing, there isn't much motivation to continue. The story, the world, and especially the gameplay are just completely uninteresting. The game, thankfully, only lasts between 2 to 4 hours, and after the first 30 minutes, just feels like a chore. There's just no fun to be had here, I'm afraid, and so I'm giving the game a 3 out of 10. It's playable, but I wouldn't recommend it.